Good day, everyone. I am Vincent Kabutat. I will discuss the deconstruction of Marxism by Jacques Derrida. The content of this report is to introduce who was Jacques Derrida and what is deconstruction means, and followed by body and conclusion. Jacques Derrida was born on July 15, 1930 in El Bior, Algeria, and died on October 8, 2004 in Paris, France. He was a French philosopher who critiqued the Western philosophy and the analysis of the nature of language, writing, and meaning were highly controversial, yet immensely influential in much of the intellectual world in the late 20th century. At the origin of this work was a lecture given in two sessions, first on April 22 and followed by April 23 in 1993 at the University of California, Riverside. That lecture opened an international colloquium organized by Bernd Manius and Stephen Kornberg under the ambiguous title, Whether Marxism, in which one we hear beneath the question, where is Marxism going? While some of the essay are in direct conversation with the text of Derrida, others illustrate the force of his argument whether they intend to do so or not. Especially and telegraphically, at least 4 points of contact emerge from Derrida's Spectres of Marx and its companion volume Whether Marxism. First, the proper names Marx and or Marxisms. These have always already been plural nouns, despite their grammatical form and despite the fact that they have been understood as if they were rigid designators. Second is communism, in its own pluralities, is not the same as Marxism. Third, both communism and Marxism are historically situated, inflected, mediated by particular traditions and histories. Then fourth, proper names Marx is in a certain sense entirely uncircumventable. What is this? What is deconstruction? Deconstruction was both created and has been profoundly influenced by the French philosopher Jacques Derrida. Derrida, who coined the term deconstruction, argues that in Western culture, people tend to think and express their thoughts in terms of binary opposition, for instance, white, black, masculine, feminine, cause, effect, consciousness, unconsciousness, presence, absence, speech, writing. Derrida suggests these oppositions are hierarchies in miniature, containing one term that Western culture views as positive or superior and another considered negative or inferior, even if only slightly so. Though deconstruction, Derrida aims to erase the boundary between binary oppositions, and to do so in such a way that the hierarchy implied by the oppositions is thrown into question. Spectres of Marx. This is Jacques Derrida introduces in this book the notion of spectrality and arouses controversy among Marxist intellectuals by his method of deconstruction. What is spectres means? The notion of spectrality present in the title finds its origin in the first lines of the Communist Party Manifesto, where Karl Marx writes, "A spectre haunts Europe, the specter of communism. Spectre is a paradoxical incorporation, the becoming body, a certain phenomenal and carnal form of the spirit. It becomes rather something that remains difficult to name, neither soul nor body, and both one and the other. For it is flesh and phenomenality that give to the spirit its spectral apparition, but which disappear right away in the apparition, in the very coming of the revenant, or the return of the scepter. Derrida went on his talks on this topic to list 10 plagues of the capital or global system, and then to an account of the claim the creation of a new grouping of activism called the New International. All the more or the more so is that telework inscribes there a new set of givens that perturbs both the method of traditional calculation and the conceptual opposition between work and non-work activity. So this is the first, the unemployment. It is that more or less well-calculated deregulation of the new market, new technologies, new worldwide competitiveness would no doubt, but like labor or production, deserve another name today. Second, deportation of immigrants. The massive exclusion of homeless citizens from any participation in the democratic life of the states. The expulsion or deportation of so many exiles, stateless persons, and immigrants from a so-called national territory already herald a new experience of frontiers and identity, whether national or civil. Third, economic war, both between countries and between international trade blocs United States, Japan, and Europe. The ruthless economic war among the countries of the European community themselves, between them and the Eastern European countries, between Europe and the United States, and between Europe, the United States, and Japan. This war controls everything, beginning with the other wars, because it controls the practical interpretation and an inconsistent and unequal application of international law. There have been too many examples in the last decade or more. Third, fourth rather, contradiction and the free market. The undecidable conflicts between protectionism and free trade, the unstoppable flow of illegal drugs, arms, or etc. So the inability to master the contradiction of the concept, norms, and reality of the free market. How is how is one to save one's own interests in the global market while claiming to protect one's social advantages and so forth? So fifth, arms trade. The inability to control to any meaningful extent trade within the biggest black market. The arms industry and trade, whether it be conventional arms or at the cutting edge of technological sophistication, are inscribed in the normal regulation of the scientific research, economy, and socialization of labor in Western democracy. Short of unimaginable revolution, they cannot be suspended or even cut back without running major risks, beginning with the worsening of the said unemployment. As for arms trafficking to the degree that it can still be distinguished from normal commerce, it remains the largest in the world, larger than the drug traffic, from which it is not always dissociated. Fifth, foreign debt. In effect, the basis for mass starvation and demoralization for developing countries, often the loans benefiting only a small elite for luxury items, example, car, air conditioning, or etc., but being paid back by poorer workers. 7. The spread of nuclear weapon. The restriction of nuclear capacity can no longer be maintained by leading states, since it is only knowledge and cannot be contained. It maintains by the very countries that say they want to protect themselves from it is no longer even controllable, as was the case for a long time, by statist structures. It exceeds not only statist control but every declared market. 8. Enter ethnic war. It is a phantom of mythic national identities, flowing tension and semi-developing countries. Inter-ethnic war are pro-life rating, driven by an anarch phantasm and concept by a primitive conceptual phantasm of community. The nation-state, sovereignty, borders, native soil, and blood. Ninth, phantom state. These phantom states have infiltrated and banalized themselves anywhere, to the point that they can no longer be strictly identified, nor even sometimes clearly dissociated from the processes of democratization. Or think about, for example, of the schema, telegraphical, simplified here that would associated or associate them with the history of a Silesian mafia harassed by the fascism of the Monosulian state, thus intimately and symbiotically allied to the allies in the democratic camp on both sides of the Atlantic as well as in the reconstruction of the Italian Christian Democratic State, which has today entered into a new configuration of capital, about which the last one can say is that we will understand nothing of what is happening there if we do not take account of its genealogy. 10th, international law. The hypocrisy of such statutes in the face of unilateral aggression on the part of the economical dominant states. International law is mainly exercised against the weaker nation. For above all, one would have to analyze the present state of international law of, and of its institution, despite of fortunate perfectibility, despite an undeniable progress. These international institutions suffer from at least two limits, and the first and most radical of the two stems from the fact that their norms, their character, the definition of their mission depend on a certain historical culture. Conclusion. Derrida has not always been willing to consider himself a Marxist. In early texts, he suggests that Marxism itself is subject to deconstruction, that it belongs to the metaphysics of presence. As he cited on his book, the scepter is the future, it is always to come. It presents itself only as that which could come or come back. Thank you very much for listening.